Hello, this is a training and demonstration video to show you how with EmpowerDB, generating your MPSSG cost report will be as easy as visiting one simple reporting page, selecting the contract and the month, and then all of your MPSSG cost data is tabulated for you automatically, including even the really complicated things like figuring out the average number of weeks clients have been on the wait list, things like that. All right, so this video assumes that you have already gone to empowerdb.com, clicked on the join button here, and then filled out this form to set up your own version of EmpowerDB automatically. We have a variety of plans. You can watch this video here to have those explained further, but this video is going to be showing you all of what's possible on our free plan. So you would select this MPSSG template there to have that version of the system created for you. Again, all automatically be ready for you in just a few minutes after you fill out this form. Okay, so after you do that, you will be signed into your own version of EmpowerDB. And before we get started showing some other things, I just want to make sure it's clear that how to add in brand new users into the database, because it's something that you might end up needing to do a lot of, especially if you have multiple of these contract types. So you would do that by going to the staff list and then clicking Add New Staff up top here. So the first few fields should all be pretty self-explanatory. The permission level, if you want someone to be able to do all the fancy administrative things that you'll get to see in this video, then you can make that user a site administrator. And then it's important to take a look at which programs you want to give them access to. So perhaps you have staff that are only in the peace department and you would only want them ever to see clients that are also in the peace program. So you would do that. Maybe it doesn't matter to you and you just want to say, let's give this user access to all of the programs. It doesn't matter. We want them to be able to see whatever's there for a particular client. So you would do that. Okay, so it's up to you how you do this. And you are able to add as many new users as you want. There's no limit on number of users, even for our free account. Okay, so once you've got your user account set up, let's talk about adding in client data. Specifically, we'll begin with adding in client activities. So this information we have found is one of the most common types of data that gets put into the database. So we wanted to put it right up front on the home page to make it as easy as possible to get this in. So we're adding in activities for clients that are already in the system. I will show you after this how to add in brand new clients. But let's say that we want to add in client activities for this client. It's assuming that we're meaning today, but we could change this to be any other date that we added in the activity. And then we're going to say which of these 5 contracts that we have where this activity was for. If a user only has access to one of these 5 contracts in that staff list section, what I just showed you, it will pre-select this and it'll just like assume, okay, it's definitely going to be peace, and they won't have that drop down. And now here's where we can say what activity we did. So this should be a list of the activity types that you're familiar with on the report. I'll show you at the end of this video how you can add in your own activity types into this list and make some other changes here. But out of the box, this should be fine for you. So different of the activity types on the report count the number of people served. Some of them count the number of hours served. Some of them count the number of times they received an activity. So in order to simplify that, we just kind of say, you know what, for every activity type, we're just going to collect how many hours we spent doing that thing. So let's say we did a half an hour of individual counseling, and let's say we did something else. We can click this add button here and say we also did a half an hour of safety planning. All right, and you can click that add button for as many times as you'd like. Next, we can say we referred them off to somewhere. So maybe we referred them to this place, and we can, in this name thing, type in the name of whatever mental health addiction services we referred them off to. This won't actually get used for the report. It's just if it's helpful to you. And then just like the others, we can add in as many of these types as possible. And also, just like the others, I'll show you at the end of the video how you can modify this list a little bit to make it a little bit more of your own. All right, we also have an extra activity type for this report, resources, and that's purely tracking the number of kilometers traveled. So the MPSSG report has one row where it says the number of kilometers traveled for such and such, and this is how we're going to collect that data. Finally, I have some notes. This does not get used at all for the report, but it's here just to, if it's helpful for you to have notes like this in the system. All right, so that's it. We've added all these different activity types. We don't have to add in a service, a referral, a resource, and a note. We could have just added in a note or just a referral. Just in here in the explaining to you, I happen to add in all four. Okay, we're going to add those activities, and we see our success message up top. We can also add in group data by clicking that button there and say, okay, this was, again, it's assuming for this date in this program. And we will say, okay, we did child youth group counseling for an hour, and then we would put in all of the people who attended that group. These are probably not children actually in the system, but it's okay. Some group notes. All right, and again, if it's helpful or you have some notes to go along with this groups entry, then you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, feel free to leave it blank. Add activities, and that's there. Okay, so that's how to add in these activities. Now let's take a look at how to view the activities that have already been added into the system. On the top left of every page is going to be this calendar icon. And here we can see the various activities that we just added in. We can mouse over them. We can edit them. We can delete individual things. From this view, we can also say, oh, I remember I did something on October 14th. Click that. And then this form, same form, opens up with the date pre-filled into October 14th. We can also switch this to be an outline view. And this shows us all the different activities that we've put in, but now in this, what you would expect in an outline view. Here's where I forgot to mention that when you add in an activity and you specify that it's for the PEACE program, only users who are in that PEACE program can see that activity that you've just added. Even if they can see, let's say Sandra is in both PEACE and STV. So a user could see Sandra's record in the system, but they won't be able to see the activities that you've designated as being for PEACE, because it tends to be that people are more restrictive on that kind of information. Subscribers to our paid plan can have us configure the system to behave however you want. So maybe you do want certain activities to be seen by other programs. Maybe you want everything except the notes. And so we've heard it all and we can do it all. And we'd be glad to have those conversations with you, how to make the system do that if you want. Okay, so that's adding in activities for clients that are already in the system. Now let's take a look at how to add in brand new clients into the database. So we can, on the home page, mouse over add new entry and then say add client. Where if we have access to multiple programs, we'll have this choice about which program we want to add them into. Otherwise, it would just know that it's going to go into the one program that we have. And then we can start typing in a client name. As we type in a client name, here's where I want to remind you that with EmpowerDB's zero knowledge encryption, the data that you enter into the system, like these names, can only be read by you, the people who have your site's encryption key. So even EmpowerDB staff can't actually read this text information that you write into the system. So it's a really key factor that why it makes EmpowerDB so different than really any other cloud-based database that I'm aware of. Also want to let you know that as you're entering in this client name, keep a look out on this existing client check on the right. If there's a client already in the database with that matching name or even a similar spelled name, it will be notified to you over here. It will even be notified to you over here if there's a client with this name that's already served in another program that you don't have access to. Like if one user account only has access to Peace and this client already has access to STV, it'll say, okay, Elizabeth Matthews is already in the system. It won't tell you what program they're already in, but it'll give you some basic information for you to kind of double check that you're actually adding the right person. It'll show like their name, their birth date, and things like that. You're like, oh yes, that's the exact same person, and you'll click a button that says assign to my program. Again, you won't know what other program they're actually in as you go through and fill out their information, but this kind of allows us to reduce double data, you know, duplicates in the system. All right, so we've got the name in, that's all fine, and we can put in their birth date or age. So if we know someone's birth date, we will always know their age. The database will be able to figure that out and put them into whatever age category, adult or child, is relevant. If you don't know somebody's age, you can enter in an estimate for their age. And the reason why we have every single year listed here as an estimate is so that as this person, as time goes on, this estimate can age. So if we came back here 2 years later, it would say 36 years. Okay, and it's really helpful to have it like this so that we can automatically put this client into whatever age range category any funder can throw at us. And we'll select the gender as this. So that's it for demographic information on this report. And here's where I'll say that if you're subscribed to our paid account, we're very happy to go through the process with you of adding on whatever additional fields you want to collect for demographics or case management type information for all of your different funding sources. But this is showing you just the MPSSG templates required information, which is why you're only getting those 2 basic questions. Now let's take a look at intakes. So this is the really key part of the system where we can say, okay, I did an intake with this person on this date. It was for Peace. They were referred to me from, let's say, the school. And now let's talk about this field, initial intake outcome. Some programs that we work with, kind of as soon as you come in, we do an intake for you, you're counted as an active client. So you might kind of say right off the bat, client became active. Other programs that we work with will put clients on a wait list, or will have just some other version of, you know, we do a starting intake for you on this date. You're counted as a new referral for us on that date. I'm actually going to change this to September so it shows up on the September report when I run it. And then maybe on a later date, for whatever reason, we can say, okay, we did their initial intake on September 20th, but it wasn't until September 30th that they became active. So your program may, you know, use much different words than intake for this. With our paid account, we can switch these words around or have it, you know, this intake section behave exactly the way that your individual programs do it. But this has been set up to kind of be that universal way that we've seen people approach the situation. So if you don't have any kind of possibility of having a waiting period between when you do that initial intake and when they become active, then I would suspect that you would have the situation a lot where you'd say, okay, their initial intake was this date and they became active on that same exact date. Okay, let's say someone was put on the wait list. When we do that, we have this little reminder here saying, oh, make sure somebody's on the wait list entry. So here's this wait list entry, and this is where we need to have, say, okay, they were put on the wait list as of this date for Peace. That way, when they're removed from the wait list, we can say, okay, they were removed on September 30th. And this is how the system is able to do that really great math on how many weeks of your average number of clients were on the wait list kind of thing. This also lets us say maybe they were taken off the wait list. Maybe they told us on the 23rd they actually don't want to be on the wait list anymore. But then maybe they called back on the 25th and they said, I do want to be on the wait list again. Okay, so by saying include additional waitlist entry, we can really finally manage how long people have come on and off the wait list. And I'll show you in a later part of this video how we can view the wait list, and it'll be sorted by like how long somebody has been on the wait list, so that you can really easily pick off the highest person on the list. All right, that's a very similar situation happens up here where we can say include additional intake and say, okay, maybe they were file closed on some date and then they come back a few months later. You can say include additional intake and fill in the brand new information for that new intake for them there. You can also say, all right, they're with the PEACE program. They've asked me, they want to start with the outreach program. So you can add in a new intake for the outreach program, and this will assign this client to the outreach program, and they will be able to view that client's information there, as well as the initial information that you've entered for them in here. But if the other user in outreach doesn't have access to the PEACE program, they won't be able to see your PEACE intake. These intake entries and these waitlist entries are set to be only visible to users who have access to those programs. All right, that sounded like a lot. Hopefully it kind of sounded logically what you would expect for this kind of thing. But that's really all there is to entering and editing data in these programs. As we scroll through here, we see that add initial activities window, and this is the same thing that we saw on that homepage, but it's just here to say, all right, yep, I was doing initial intake with these people, and during that intake we did some counseling and some initial other things, whatever you want to say. Okay, we've got that all done. Add the new client. Success, they're added. So when you're on any other page of the database, in order to get back to that client, we can go over to the lookup box here, type in their name, visit their client record like that. We could have also used their client ID number. Every client that gets added has their own unique ID number. This one is 21. And we could have just gone up to lookup box and said, go to client 21. And then here's where we can say, edit the information that we've already put in, say, okay, I took them off the wait list on this date, and then perhaps very soon after, maybe on this date we close them. So you can really manage all the information just from this one page. Save changes. We can also, from this view, go to this client's activities outline, and this gets us a list of all the activities for this client that our user account has permission to see for them. And we can also do other things like add new activities for this client from this view as well. All right, before we get off to getting more in depth about how this amazing report tabulates all the information, I just want to point out this program list view. So, I'm sorry, there's one more thing about these intakes that I meant to mention, and that is being shown here with this incident information. So some of these contracts include need to know what type of abuse this person experienced. So here's where we have this, and we can check off the different things like this. One of the contracts, gosh, I'm blanking on which one it is, has a really complicated list of incidents where it's saying like intimate partner abuse by a stranger for where it was a child, and like the list is really long and complicated like that. So you won't see that being listed in your incident section here. Instead, the database is getting that information by here it is, I think it's community-based victim services, by looking at the abuser relationship and the incident and the age of the client. So it's combining all that information together to make it so that we can have one easy list, incident information list, and then we can pulls that all for you together and matches it and say, okay, it was assault by a stranger and this was a child, so we know what category to put them into. Okay, what are we doing now? Oh yeah, the program list. So if we go visit this program list, we see that there's 4 options that we can view here. First is a list of our active clients. So these are the 4 people who are currently active in our program and their intake dates. We can also look at intakes left open. And so this is kind of a category that's mostly here to protect against data entry errors. So in this case, this client was enrolled into Peace, and then their initial intake outcome was not within mandate. Their intake record still needs to be closed, and so I would assume that it would be closed as of the date that it was opened. But we still need to have that closed so that we can have a really clear list of who our active clients are, and then other things like counting up the number of cases that were closed in a certain month. Okay, so now that we've done that and we go back to our piece, we have nobody left in our intakes left open. So it's good to check here every once in a while to make sure that there's nobody kind of lingering that we didn't close out like we should have. Here's our closed clients. This will give us everybody who's had a file close date. And then finally, here is our wait list ordered by the number of days on the wait list up top. So say we have an opening in our Peace program, we would know to contact Judy because she's been on the wait list the longest. Once we do get in contact with her and we take her off the wait list, we would say, okay, I took her off the wait list today. And maybe the outcome was, she declined the services after being put on waitlist, or the client was unreachable after being put on waitlist. And the report will know how to handle those situations and properly calculate those where they should be. And let's say that's the case. We would say, okay, file's being closed today. If she calls back later, we can include additional intake and start the process again. Hooray, hurrah. All right, let's get into how to run this report. Reports, BC MPSSG. We can select the contract we want to run the report for. Submit. All right. So this is what I showed you in the opening, but I'll kind of go through a little bit more clearly here and show you what's going on. So all these questions here are formed to match exactly what's on your MPSSG report. There's an extra column here for methodology, and that's what kind of giving you a little bit more background information about how the database is pulling the number that you see here. You can also click on each of these numbers and it will show you a list of clients who are appearing in this section. And a few of these sections will have, kind of a list of other things. So the most common reasons why new referrals were deemed not appropriate. So this is calculating based off of that initial intake outcome drop down, and you might see 3 or 4 lists of options here, and they're counted by they're ordered by the most popular. So because it says most common, we can't say what that means to you. I think there's a better example down here. Let me scroll down. This here lists 1 or more of the most time-consuming services. So it's up to you where you want your cutoff for total hours spent. Maybe you say, well, these were the most time-consuming because they had 1 hour or more. So it's up to you what you decide to put in for this list. You wouldn't put in these numbers of total hours. This is only being shown to you here so that you can have a basis for where you're drawing that line between what you tell them and what you don't. And as long as you're here, I'll mention these are listing service types that this contract does not count as an official service type, but are still listed in the database already, likely because they are supported by other contracts. So this is all test data that's being entered in pretty willy-nilly. You might not see such a large list here because perhaps the list of services that are supported for your contract are the only ones that your staff would ever actually be putting in, just kind of naturally speaking. And so you would only really be seeing this list here. And so again, you'll be able to click on these numbers and it gets you a really detailed list of like, okay, how did we come up with this number? This is counting number of sessions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. So you really should be able to just take each of these numbers here and copy them over into your funder report after you have verified that the numbers are what you expect them to be. You might see a row here highlighted in orange and the methodology saying this is not an actual category. That's kind of a rare situation that you might come up with. If you do see that, there will be a link in that row that says click here for more information, and it'll really clearly explain to you what you need to do in order to address that situation. Yeah, that should be it. I really hope that you're looking at this being like, wow, this will save us so much time, because that's definitely what we've experienced with the handful of organizations we've already set up this report for. Before we go, I want to talk about just a couple quick things. The one being you can add in a event into the system here. So things like, okay, for the outreach program, we did a community coordination event, and that this data gets fed into the parts of the report that figure out these types of events. So this should be pretty easy. You can play around with that if that's helpful to you. And I also wanted to go over some additional things that you can do to administer your system. So first thing is, let's take a look at our list of programs. Let's say you don't have a police-based victim service program. You never will. You know for sure. You can just click on there and say delete program, and it's gone. And you don't have that cluttering up your system anymore. You could also just make sure none of your users are enrolled in this program or have access to this program, and it will essentially disappear, but it will still be kind of in this list for you in case you do ever have this program later. The other thing you can do is, let's say you call your outreach program or any of these something totally different. You can change the name of it here, and it will appear as something else all throughout the system when you're trying to assign program clients to this program and all that. And you can also, I have a list here. Where are you doing? Okay, I covered the programs. I also wanted to talk about modifying your service types. So if we go to database administration and then service types, this shows us our list of service types that we had in that add activities module on the home page. And various things you can do here. You can say, I would never do this at all. I'm going to make this inactive. Or you can say, I don't want programs in, this is perhaps this is only a service that you ever want peace staff putting in. You can say, only make this allowed to enter in by peace staff. You can also change the name of it if you call it something slightly different, but you still want it to be converted to the MPSSG report as whatever this is called. And from this list, you can also add in a new service type and say, we want this service type. And whenever we put in the service type, I want this to be counted as meeting with Crown. I don't know, whatever it's going to be. But this is, it's going to be helpful for situations where things like, maybe you have justice system update, but you want to separate this out into filing, and another one for sentencing, and another one for PO update, and you want all three of those to convert to this one thing when the report is run. The system will do that for you automatically, and you can collect the data in the way that's helpful to you and have it still be filtered into the report in the way that MPSSG is expecting it to be. So you can do that for service types. You can also do that for referral types. Where did it go? Let's say, maybe you're referring to like a really predictable set of community-based victim service programs. You can make the list, like that, where you put in your set list of community-based victim service programs that you refer off to, and just make sure each have that as their conversion. Same kind of thing you can do for whether you want it to be visible to only certain programs or active or not. And you might think you can do the same for your resource types where we're tracking kilometers traveled, but this resource types, you should only just kind of leave this as it is. If you don't track kilometers traveled in this way, then that's totally fine, but just kind of, the resource types have not been set up in such a way where you can do a lot of customization. and group types have. So if you have lots of different types of group counseling, maybe you have like an English group or a Spanish group and you want to set that up, you can do that here. Oh, it seems like I've done this before. And say, yes, this counts as an MPSSG group, and we're going to count it as a group counseling group. Okay, so that will really be helpful for some of you to kind of make these lists be a lot more tailored to your organization and what you exactly do. But again, it's totally optional. The way that the system is created for you to begin with is all built to comply with exactly how the report functions as it is. That's everything. If you have more questions about how this all works, we'd be glad to answer your questions and kind of make sure that you're comfortable on the system and it's all working for you. You can send us a message through the database support system here. If you are using our free account, you'll get slightly more limited support and attention from this because, with the free product, we can't spend too much time walking you through things. But even with the free account, we're going to want to make sure that you're being successful in this because we've done a lot of work to support this funder report, and we know how helpful it can be and how much time it's going to save people. And so, we just really want to help you to get the best out of it and make use of it. Another thing you can do if you have questions is take a look in this database documentation section. For example, you can learn here how to delete and merge clients, as well as a variety of other things. All right, that is everything. And thank you so much for watching through all this way. And again, really hope that this tool is helpful to you and your organization. Thanks.